Gotcha. I think we're good. Awesome. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, November 5th, 2021 Township Committee meeting. Please join us as we salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975. This is the state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the news record in Star Ledger December 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor McGehee?
Here.
Mayor, if I may just mention to the public that Ms. Fritzen is not here tonight because she is at the League of Municipalities, and I am going to do my best to fill in for her as inadequately as that may be. For my apologies in that regard.
We appreciate you, Mr. Desiderio.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meeting Act, requires that all meetings of the public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas it is desire of the governing body to comply with the provisions of this act and at the same time conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood that it is hereby prohibited, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes. All right. And thank you very much, Mr. Desiderio. You're doing a fine job, if I may say so myself. So I'll briefly run through our agenda for this evening. We're first going to have an appointment to the Senior Advisory Committee to be led by Mr. Daffis. Then we'll have our November Spotlight, which is for Mr. Lynn Mandola. Also a proclamation read by Mr. Daffis and words from Mr. Palmer. We'll have our first public comment on agenda items only, but we also will have a brief presentation by our Rec Advisory Committee. From there, agenda item 8, we have an ordinance on introduction relating to bonding. And then from there, we'll go into our administrative reports. Tonight, we'll hear from 2 of our 3 key administrators, Mr. Dimes, our Township Administrator, and Mr. Desiderio, our Township Clerk. After that, we'll have reports from our elected officials. We'll first hear from Ms. Adams, then Mr. DeLuca, Mr. Lembrick, Deputy Mayor Daffis, and then myself. Discussion items. We have a total of 5 on our agenda for this evening. We'll have a discussion regarding the spray park located in Maple Crest Park. We'll have a discussion about the Hart Park in relation to an evaluation of the field condition. We'll have a report on the Cannabis Review Committee's report, which is also going to provide us with a draft ordinance. We'll then have the report from Code Committee and Zoning Review permit by Mr. Daffis, and then also hear from Mr. Daffis again regarding vaccination policy here at the Township. The consent agenda really has 5 core pieces. The first one is hiring of a full-time environmental specialist in our health department. We'll also have the appointment of a position to our Department of Community Development. And then we have a total of 3 authorizations, including authorization, a refund of tax overpayments, the 2021 budget transfer between appropriate accounts, and then the hiring of a professional staff for the Maplewood Community Service Department. We also will have a conversation about the resolution for bills and claims. And then finally, we'll have an authorization of rewarding a contract for asbestos abatement at the Maplewood Library, Memorial Library. After that, we'll go into our second public comment, any item whatsoever, and then we will adjourn. So with that, we'll go ahead and move forward, and I'll yield the floor to Mr. Daffis for his introduction of boards and committees.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking through here to our attendees to see if we have Shirley Holly Davis with us. Nick, am I missing? Missing her? I don't see her unless you've converted her over to panelist already. I don't
We've
see.
not converted her over to a panelist, and I do not see them in the attendees.
Right. I know Ms. Fritzen did send information along to Shirley Holly Davis about tonight, and I've seen confirmation of that. I'm not sure if they're having a problem logging in or what's going on. So can we have a motion to appoint? Can we move to appoint her even though she's not present?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
You just might want to say what you're appointing her to for the public.
Sure. I move that we appoint, thanks, Ms. Adams, you're right. I move that we appoint Shirley Holly Davis to the Senior Advisory Committee.
Still second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Desiderio, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Desiderio, and thank you, Mr. Daffis. But don't go anywhere. We're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is employee spotlight. And we are recognizing a well-deserved individual in Mr. Mendola and Mr. Daffis. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and well-deserved indeed. Len Mendola is our construction official and zoning officer, and he is a very fine example of our employees at Town Hall. He is smart, professional, reliable, kind, and excellent customer service. I know personally, we work a lot together through the Code Enforcement Committee that I chair. He really doesn't just return emails or phone calls. He actually goes out to sites, whether they're commercial or residential, and he is personally invested in everything that we do in our town. So I'm really delighted tonight to spotlight Len. Our proclamation is a resolution of recognition. It's a resolution of recognition and appreciation. And it says that the Township of Maplewood has been fortunate to have dedicated staff committed to the mission of the municipality, and that we recognize Len Mendola for his commitment to the residents of our town by stepping up and addressing projects, requests, or responsibilities above and beyond, which is truly, definitely true of Len. Whereas we, the Township Committee, wish to extend our utmost appreciation for his work and everything that he has done to make public service an exciting and joyous experience for the residents of the Township of Maplewood, and that we, the Township Committee, wish to extend our sincere continued best wishes and every happiness in his future and his continued success in making the township a desirable place to work. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Maplewood Township Committee recognizes and appreciates the service of Leonard J. Mendola Jr., our construction official and zoning officer. We wish him well in future endeavors, and further that this resolution of appreciation and support be duly recorded by the Township Committee on this 15th day of November, 2021. I yield the floor to Annette De Palma, our Community Development Director. Annette?
So, hi, good evening, everyone. Len, you know, we have this ongoing joke on the second floor, which is that we're doing a sitcom. And so from time to time, just about every day, we have something that we add to the screenplay. And, you know, maybe someday we'll perform it all for you. Len, tonight you are the star of the sitcom. And so I am actually representing everybody that Len works with upstairs, because we all have the same fond regard, feelings, and love for Len. There are a few things that I wrote them down because so these are some of the things that characterize him. Enthusiastic, hardworking, diligent, always willing to learn new things, really critical. Dedicated to public service, goes the extra mile, patient, generous with his time. Len is really patient, if nothing else. And two of the things that we all appreciate about him a lot are that he has a really sunny disposition. And sometimes, you know, somebody will be upstairs and they're just kind of cranking and cranking and cranking. And Len is like the great diffuser of crankiness. And that is just so critical. To say he is sunny is an understatement, no matter what. And we all really appreciate that, even if we're all rolling our eyes at him at the same time. And the second thing is that Len is really a team player, and very often will just be doing things that he so really does not have to be doing. And often will step up and say, "Oh, do you want me to do that?" And say, "No, Len, you don't need to do that." But, you know, and sometimes he does it anyway. He always stands his ground, which is something that we all really love too. Sometimes to the chorus of much eye rolling, but it really works. So it's great. And the generosity thing, if you know, because we all work together, so we all are very friendly, and we've become great work friends. So if you say to Len, or even if you call him at 7 p.m. and say, "You know, I got to cut a piece of carpet. Do you happen to have a tool or something?" The next day you come in, and on your chair, you will find a carpet cutter, all brand new, a carpet cutter, an X-Acto knife, blades to replace the X-Acto knife, as if you're going to cut 150,000 square feet of carpet, and something very scary looking that I haven't figured out yet what it is. But that really encapsulates Len. Kindness, generosity, you know, great attitude about his work, serving residents, and just coming in every day and doing the job. And Len, we are just all so happy to be working with you. So thank you.
Congratulations, Len. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Can I speak?
Of course.
Thank you. That was overwhelming. That's so kind of everybody to say that, and I completely, totally appreciate that. But Dean, thank you, and Annette, thank you very, very much. I really, and again, luckily, I'm so lucky. We have a great team upstairs. Most of the staff, well, not most, all of the staff in Maplewood, we all get along well. All departments. So anywhere you go in the building, you speak to someone, even over in DPW, everybody's friendly. We all get along. So it's a great place to work. I mean, when I go to work, I'm never unhappy going. I go in early because I enjoy it, you know, and I love my job, and I love the people I work with, and everybody gets along great. So, you know, we have our ups and downs once in a while, but all in all, it's a fantastic place to work, and it's a vibrant town. The town's doing great. So again, thank you very much. And this really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. Again, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone, Mayor, Council, Annette, everybody. Thank you again. It was very nice. Very
Thank you,
kind.
Glenn. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And when, you know, one thing I got to point out is that when we had all that damage from Ida, that one of our really amazing small businesses, Palmer's, was in big trouble. And I reached out to Lynn on Saturday, on Sunday night, and he went above and beyond. He was there. He came even to the property. He got us the right people we need to do. And because of Lynn is a big reason why Palmer's is now opening back up. But you were there for that great small minority business owner. I really appreciate your going above and beyond, just in that one example, and so many others. So excellent.
Thank you. Thank you again. I totally appreciate it.
Well, have a good night. You don't have to
You
stay
too.
unless you want. But
You too.
we'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Bye, Len. Good
Bye.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Palmer. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to agenda item number 7, which is public comment on agenda items only. It's a limit of 3 minutes. As we get started, please give your name, your address, and turn your camera on. That's important. Thank you so much. And Mr. Waltz, we will start the process.
Good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. We'll now begin the first public comment portion of the meeting on agenda items only. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee, please use the raise your hand function. We will convert you over to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Would anybody like to address the Township Committee at this time? I have no takers, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Waltz. Awesome. So we'll just now move into our presentation by the Rec Advisory Committee. So we want to move forward with that. Let's go ahead and do that. Mr. Limbrick, who will be representing the Advisory Committee in their presentation?
I know it's going to be Ms. Heather Sislovsky and Dennis Carney, and it may also be, I see Kathleen Mitchell, and there's a few others on the line, but if we bring over Dennis and Heather, they can tell us if we need to bring over anyone else.
Perfect. Thank you.
And if you want to go ahead and unmute yourselves, Ms. Sislovsky and Mr. Carney.
Can you hear me okay?
Is there anyone else we should bring over? Convert to a panelist?
Heather, it's just you and I reading, right? Kathleen, do we want to move Kathleen over?
I think we're okay, but thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, as you previewed, the Recreation Advisory Committee has been working on the spray park proposal. Actually, before it was a spray park proposal, when it was just we've got some room, or we have a decision to make about what's the future of Maple Crest Park, the tennis courts that have been basically unusable since Hurricane Sandy, now nearly a decade ago. Over 9 years. And, the Recreation Advisory Committee, since the spray park is going to be a discussion item on tonight's agenda, wanted to take the opportunity to make this presentation and read a statement about the work they've done in terms of surveying the community and working with the Recreation Department. So I won't take any of their thunder. I will let them go ahead, but they told us they'd like about 10 minutes to make the presentation to the Township Committee. So Ms. Sislovsky, who's the chair, and Mr. Carney, who's a voting member of the committee, are here, and I will give them the floor.
Thank you, Councilman Lembrick, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for putting us on the agenda today. We have a brief statement that we would like to read. This was drafted by my colleagues on the Rec Advisory Committee, and we voted unanimously to read it into the record today, so thanks for indulging us on this. I'll read the first half, and then about halfway through, I'll hand it over to Ms. Sislovsky. The voting members of the Rec Advisory Committee write this open letter to the Township Committee in favor of moving the spray park project forward expeditiously and as previously planned. For several years, the Rec Advisory Committee has been tasked with determining how to best improve the tennis court area of Maple Crest Park. To this end, we have held forums, conducted a survey, reviewed emails, and researched options. The outcome of this community process was that a spray park would be built on the existing tennis court site at Maple Crest Park. During this process, we have shared our findings with the Township Committee and presented a formal report in writing in March 2021. The spray park fulfills many goals when considering additions or improvements to community spaces. One, to be inclusive of those with different abilities, the spray park design is expected to be accessible to those of many different abilities. Two, to reach residents in all parts of our town and of all racial and socioeconomic demographics. The spray park will be the first and only free water feature in our town. In October 2021, we were suddenly presented with a proposal for a new location for the spray park, and we were told that it would save the taxpayers money. After further investigation, we determined that this was not the case. The cost would effectively be the same or more for the newly proposed location, and the proposed new footprint for the spray park would be of inadequate size to create the accessibility desired by the community and in an awkward location. Moreover, it would not address the issue of rehabilitating the space where the unusable tennis courts currently sit, and the traffic at the new location would impede the walking/biking paths. Then at the Township Committee meeting on November 4th, 2021, it became unclear whether or not the Township Committee was committed to the plan that was the result of a lengthy, and thorough public process. We write to urge that the town move forward with the original plan and to do so expeditiously. This plan is backed by the Rec Advisory Committee voting members, by the Recreation Department, and most importantly, by the community. The original plan was also approved by the OSTF, who has not met recently for us to determine their position on this change of plans. Below is a timeline and a summary of the process, community input, and response of the Township Committee. First, the initial request. Initially, through the input of the community members and organizations, several improvement ideas for the Maple Crest tennis court areas surfaced. After a number of forums, the TC determined that the basketball court proposal initially made by the prior recreation director would change locations to DeHart Park. Community survey from May 2020 through September 2020. Maplewood Recreation determined that a community survey should be conducted. A survey met two goals. One, it provided an objective and analytical method of collecting community feedback. And two, it was an important component of the OSTF application process, which requires demonstration of objective, broad-based community support so as to avoid funding pet projects. The Recreation Department and the Recreation Advisory Committee spent months preparing and editing this survey. A community survey was disseminated on August 25th, 2020, with a closing date of September 15th, 2020, a date that was ultimately extended to allow some community groups to allow for additional responses. In order to collect feedback from a broad and inclusive cross-section of residents, the following sources were used. The Maplewood Recreation Database of 7,700 residents, SOMA, Two Towns for All Ages, Senior Services Community Group serving over 550 SOMA residents, high school social media groups, including MAPSO Youth Coalition, Cougar Nation, Minority Achievement Community, National Spanish Honor Society, and broad community Facebook groups, including MAPSO Recreation Fields Task Force, Maplewood Moms, and Friends of Maple Crest Park. The survey received a total of 1,272 survey responses, a sample size of 3 times greater than the recommended sample size needed to generate reliable results. 50% of survey respondents indicated that they lived in the neighborhood surrounding Maple Crest Park. The results, the spray park was heavily favored, but with more than twice the number of votes as the second most popular choice. I'll hand it over to Ms. Zaslavsky.
In October and November of 2020, we held community meetings. The RAC broadly publicly noticed and held 2 open community meetings via Zoom as a forum to answer questions and receive feedback. That was October 17th, 2020 and November 20th, 2020. Mayor McGehee attended one and Committeeman Lembrick attended the other. The Open Space Trust Fund submission, review, and approval process from November 2020 through February 2021. In November and December 2020, the Recreation Director submitted for OSTF approval and provided supporting documentation. On February 18th, 2021, the Director of Recreation formally presented the spray park project to the OSTF Advisory Committee. That advisory committee voted to approve the funds required for the installation of the spray park in Maple Crest Park and was complimentary of the department's efforts to get community feedback and making an informed proposal. In February 2021, on February 27th, 2021, the spray park proposal was presented at the Township Committee budget meeting. In response to the proposal, TC member Mr. DeLuca said that in the past, the Township Committee had made a policy decision that all of Maplewood parks would have a tennis court, and thus the lack of a tennis court at Maple Crest Park in the proposal was an obstacle to moving forward with the spray park. We've consulted the town ordinances and we found no policy or ordinance to that effect. In March of 2021, as you all know, I submitted a chairperson report on March 4th. Most of the above timeline was shared with you at that time. And then in June 2021, there was a budget hearing where the spray park plan was approved in the budgeting process without funding for tennis courts. Throughout the last 18 months, the Recreation Department staff have sought to become as educated as possible regarding spray parks and accessibility for all. Ms. Mancuso took a splash park design course at NJRPA and met with engineers and vendors. Based upon all of the foregoing, the Recreation Advisory Committee urges the Township Committee to move forward with the community-supported original plan of replacing the dilapidated tennis courts at Maple Crest Park with a spray park, and to do so without delay. A spray park would be a one-of-a-kind feature in town. There is currently no spray park within a 20-minute drive of Maplewood. In addition to providing an invaluable and unique recreational opportunity, it would also be a free cooling option during hot summers, a particularly important consideration given the financial barriers of the Maplewood pool and the increasingly hot summers. In contrast, there are 9 tennis courts in town and 17 additional courts in neighboring South Orange. Moreover, the tennis courts at Maplecrest have been unusable for years, and other courts in town continue to have plenty of availability. In fact, the town has loaned them out to private companies to conduct exercise and yoga classes during the pandemic. The Recreation Department, RAC, OSTF, and the community all overwhelmingly support this inclusive project, which is likely to benefit adjacent properties. The community favors the spray park, and thus it must be given priority. Unofficial agreements of decades past and personal opinions of politicians should be ignored in order to advance this project. The residents have spoken, the money is available, and it's allocated to this project. Moving the spray park to a smaller footprint in order to hold the tennis court space for future funding of tennis is inappropriate and would remove green space. It also goes against the spirit of rehabilitating the tennis court space into a usable, community accessible feature, as was the intent at the outset of this project. The possibility remains that a pickleball or tennis court could be added to this area at a later time, but holding up the process in order to insist on more funding in order to include a tennis court is inappropriate. Based upon the foregoing, we, the active voting members of the Maplewood Recreation Advisory Committee, strongly and unanimously urge the town to move forward with the community-supported plan for a spray park in Maplecrest Park at the current site of the locked and unusable tennis courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lasky, and thank you, Mr. Carney. Excellent report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate it. Really good. All right. I don't think we're going to comment on the report, but it was well done. And
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the reason I had asked to speak was because we have a discussion item later in the agenda.
yeah, it's a discussion item later on. So
yeah, so so we'll have our opportunity to respond and discuss this matter later. But I think for now, Mr. Walls can probably convert Mrs. Lasky and Mr. Carney back over to attendees, and I think that's the end of the RAC's presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Great report. All right, so now we'll close agenda item number 7, public comment, and also the rec advisory report. And we now have agenda item number 8, which is an ordinance on introduction. Mr. Desiderio.
Mayor, ordinance number 3046-21. Bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements and supplementing appropriations and authorizations for certain purposes in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, the State of New Jersey, appropriating $447,700 therefore, and authorizing the issue of $425,315 bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof.
I'll move this one. I move the passage of this ordinance on its first reading, its publication according to the law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on December 7th.
I second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Desiderio, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Desiderio. We'll now move on to, we'll skip agenda item number 10. The only takeaway was that Mr. Colosi asked us to finish signing the documents to formalize the audit, which he discussed at the last meeting. So please, when you get the opportunity, please sign off on that, my colleagues. Moving on to agenda item number 11, administrative reports. We'll first hear from our administrator, Mr. Gimes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief tonight. Just a quick comment on the budget. As you know, we have a finance committee meeting next Monday, but this week I worked with our CFO and we sent out the initial budget reports to the department heads, and they're due back on December 3rd in preparation of our budget hearings. As I stated before, my goal from my office will be to submit to you a preliminary operating budget that is as close to being, approvable as possible after your input. to make your jobs as efficient as possible. And then, of course, capital budgeting, will be something that is a more of a macro level discussion where we'll discuss the future goals on a capital level. But that process is underway, and after December 3rd, we should have some more color on that. I'll be able to provide some more insight. In furtherance of our discussion in closed session, I'm just going to be seeking your authorization to work with Attorney Desiderio to obtain RFPs for the position of Labor Counsel for the year 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Gimes. Any questions for Mr. Gimes?
Can we have a motion on that,
I
Mayor?
move we issue an RFP for Labor Counsel.
Second.
Any
Second.
further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Desiderio, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
To the extent I'm permitted to vote, yes.
Oh, you're certainly permitted to vote.
Okay, since it was for 2022, I wasn't sure. Okay, but
Well, we're just going out for the RFP, so. And Mr.
Okay,
Mayor
yes.
McGee.
Yes, then I'm a yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any additional comments, questions for Mr. Gimes? Hearing none, we'll now move on to hear from Mr. Desiderio.
I have no report, Mayor. And
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any questions for Mr. Desiderio?
Sorry.
Any questions for you though? You don't, just because you don't report, I mean people can't ask you questions.
Absolutely, sir.
All right. Hearing no report or questions, we will adjourn our agenda item number 9, and we'll move on. I did jump ahead of reports to departments, so I apologize for that. I have several agendas in front of me, but we'll hear from our elected officials, and we'll first hear from Ms. Adams.
I was waiting for you to introduce Ms. Fritzen. I forgot. I just have one quick item. Well, first, I don't know if you say Happy Transgender Awareness Week, but it is Transgender Awareness Week. Just tolerance is everything, and understanding each other as humans would be a real step forward, and just making sure that we respect each other and the lives we lead. Just a reminder, and that's what these weeks, months that have specific things to recognize are specifically for. So, but my only item of my report is really a big thank you and shout out to the Memorial Park, Maplewood Memorial Park Conservancy. Those of you who worked in conjunction with our Department of Public Works on replanting, first removing the emergency pole there, moving that to a new location so that the entrance to Maplewood Memorial Park from Donnell Road and the train station, just another of their many beautification projects that the Conservancy has worked on. So as we call it, the triangle above the by Flagpole Hill has now been replanted, and a boulder has been set, and an entry sign will be put on there. So I just want to give a shout out to the Conservancy and everyone. As it grows in, it'll just get more and more beautiful. So thank you to Deb Lyons, who's chair of that Conservancy, and everyone in that group who works really hard on restoring and paying attention to that historic park. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll now hear from Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things from Engineering Public Works they are on the discussion item, so I'm not going to be talking about those now. But I did want to say that we are prepared to move as quickly as possible once the infrastructure bill that was signed today by President Biden is made effective. Once we know what's available, we will be ready to get our proposals in and use whatever levers of influence we might have at the state level and certainly at the federal level to be considered for some of that funding. So we're on it. We're keeping a tab on what's going to be available, and we'll move as quickly as possible. I did want to mention two things from our Sustainable Maplewood. We are moving forward and looking at the possibility of creating a community solar project. And in this regard, what we would be looking for is a large industrial commercial building where we would work with a third party to install solar there. And then the solar that gets generated there is sold to low and moderate income residents, and they get a break on their electric bill. So I want to thank Tracy Woods for working with us and leading us on this, and hopefully we'll be able to move further on this in 2022. And the second thing is ties into what Mr. Giles was talking about with the budget. For a long time, Maplewood has looked at ways in which we could reduce our carbon footprint. And we had adopted a program back in 2007 to do some of that. It was a statement and a set of principles. We haven't really followed everything like we had wanted to, and we need to update that, of course. But one thing we want to do is we want to look at ways in which our decision-making and our purchasing supports sustainability. So we're going to have a meeting with Mr. Giles and Mr. Kaloje and Ms. Barnett, and we're going to talk about ways in which we can incorporate sustainability in our decisions about purchasing vehicles and doing other public capital projects. And we're looking at other municipalities to see if there's any kind of a sustainability score sheet that we might be able to use as we're thinking of these public expenditures. So more on that, and hopefully we can get it into our process of budget hearing in 2022. And that is it until the discussion items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. We'll now hear from Mr. Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few quick items tonight. Report on last week's Public Safety Committee meeting. We, as usual, met with both the fire chief and police chief. One of the issues that's been affecting both of our departments, but particularly, even more so our fire department, has been COVID issues. We've had a number of our fire platoons that have been impacted by either positive COVID tests or contact tracing. And we currently have several, at least as of last week, we had several people who were out because of either positive COVID tests or had to quarantine due to contact tracing. We also have several firefighters who are on administrative leave at this point who have not complied with the vaccine mandate that is the township policy. In the police department, the overtime has not been as bad, and although they have had some illness and injury issues, the budget has held there. In terms of statistics, just the updated crime reporting, robbery is on the good side. Robbery is down 42% this year. Larceny and theft is down 38%. The things that are up, however, are assaults. As you know, the main sources of those statistics are the two high-profile incidents, one on Hughes Street and one on Underhill Field, which I think most everyone in the community and certainly everyone at this meeting is familiar with. And the other is we have a substantial increase this year in motor vehicle theft. And while there's not much that citizens can do to help us with respect to most thefts on our crime report, motor vehicle theft is something that residents can do to avoid being a victim. And every year, the overwhelming majority, I would say easily 80, if not 90% of car thefts that we see in Maplewood have the keys in them. And many of those are running at the time they're stolen. And we are only probably going to see, unfortunately, more of that as we get into these cold weather months. People who remote start their cars to warm them up before they get in, or stop for a quick errand and run in to to grab something from a store and leave their car running. You know, what the chief tells us is that, and his detectives tell us, is that a lot of these motor vehicle thefts really are crimes of opportunity. If a car thief sees a car running and unattended, they take it. If someone is rummaging through a car and looking for valuables, but they find the keys, they'll take the car. You know, I'll just say again, you know, there's a lot of things you can't necessarily do to keep yourself safe from some crimes, but motor vehicle theft, you largely can. You know, don't volunteer to be a victim. Don't leave your keys in your car. Don't leave your car running and unattended. You know, because that is one of the biggest sources of crime increase in Maplewood this year. For what it's worth, the chief and his staff tell us that other communities in this area, we're not alone. Other communities are seeing the same kind of thing, that thieves are targeting cars that either are left running or even if they're not running, have the keys left in them. So please don't leave your car running and unattended. Don't leave your keys in your car. And Mr. Mayor, the last thing I'll mention is that the Township Committee conducted interviews last week for a fire chief, and we'll be appointing a fire chief at our meeting on December 7th. And that is my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. We'll now hear from Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of items on the discussion agenda, as you know, that relate to my committee assignments. We'll get to those shortly. I do want to report, as many of you know, we proudly unveiled our community fridge on Saturday. We're really delighted about that and really grateful for all of our sponsors and our partners in helping us fight food insecurity in our community and surrounding communities. The community fridge is located on Springfield Avenue in Indiana. It is open all the time. It's available to anyone. Take what you need, leave what you can. And we will continue monitoring the fridge over there to make sure that it's safe. Certainly our Department of Health will be monitoring weekly in terms of to ensure that the food that's there, you know, is safe and sanitary, and our Department of Public Works will be monitoring to ensure that the fridge is in good working order. So we're really excited about that. On Saturday, we also celebrated 2 new innovative businesses at the General Cooperative, again on Springfield Avenue. Springfield Avenue is where it's at. Very, very hot stuff happening over there. The General Cooperative has been in business now for 2 years. They're a co-retail space, an incubator space for many local businesses. And we celebrated 2 in particular on Saturday: the Good Bottle Refill Shop, the only one of its kind in New Jersey when it opened first, and the Plant-Based Farms. You can literally grow your own food these days and do it right next to a lamp or a light like the one I'm using tonight on this Zoom. It doesn't need to be outside. A lot of water is not required. So there's really good things. Go over there and check it out. Support our local businesses, especially our female entrepreneurs here in Maplewood, including the great women who run the General Co-op. So go over there. The volunteer fair that we had on Sunday, on Saturday also, there's a lot of things happening on Saturday, was very successful. Despite the rain and the bad weather, we had a lot of people come out and sign up to volunteer, which is really what we're about here in this community. And I'm particularly heartened by the fact that we had youth. A lot of CHS students were there to sign up to help with historic preservation and senior advisory and other important volunteer opportunities in our town. So again, civic engagement is what our brand is, and we keep demonstrating that over and over again. In policing, I just want to mention a couple of things from our community board on police. The subcommittee that will be conducting internal affairs review is consulting with legal and with the police department in how to set that up in terms of necessary training and the necessary firewall that needs to be in place from the CRB, the Civilian Review Function, from the rest of the board. In terms of our social worker initiative related to policing, I hear updates from our administrator, Mr. Jimes, and Assistant Administrator Bailey Barnett, that we have a few social worker candidates that we're vetting. Our social worker member on the Community Board on Police and our Department of Health officer herself are vetting those candidates. And I know that our health department has also established support from the Mental Health Association of Morris and Essex County, which is really great news, because we were sort of a little bit not so sure about how we were going to make this thing happen. The lack of infrastructure at the moment, at least with the first and second person that we hire before we get up and running. But having the support of the Mental Health Association of Morris and Essex County is going to be terrific. And we applaud Health Officer Davenport's work in that regard. And we look forward to administrations executing an MOU with the association. And I will completely keep you updated about those efforts. And finally, as Ms. Adams very importantly noted, this is Transgender Awareness Week, culminating on November 20th later this weekend with Transgender Day of Remembrance. We usually have a ceremony. We hadn't done one in a couple of years due to COVID. There is something that the Newark LGBTQ Community Center will be hosting in Newark on November 20th, starting at 5:30 p.m. in observance of Transgender Day of Remembrance. So we welcome folks to come out. I will be there. I hope some of my fellow colleagues will join me to honor the memory of Ashley Moore and the 69 transgender lives we've lost just this year alone. And those are the lives that we know about because they've been reported as transgender losses. There are many others that we don't know about. So please come on out in person in front of the Newark YMCA on Broad Street on the 20th at 5:30 p.m. And that is my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. I want to thank my colleagues for covering so much that you truncated my report extensively. Thank you. So I'll be much briefer than I was intending to be. So I'll cover a few things. One, last time at the last meeting, I discussed that the master plan had been disseminated to my colleagues and to key stakeholders at the administration. We've received that feedback. We've implemented that feedback in, and now the master plan is ready for official RFP. So that's good news. We're moving forward on that. Economic development. Now, after a successful launch of Greenway Grocery Markets, we're now turning our attention to the movie theater, and we'll be collaborating with that investment team to work toward moving that project through. You know, our goal is obviously to get that up and running as we have with Greenway. So we have two big wins for the community. Regarding the Rockaway River Mayors Association, there was a rejection by the Army Corps of Engineers regarding the Orange Reservoir Dam project. And so we met with the commissioner from NJDEP, who has provided some other options. The committee is currently looking at those options. I'll report out to my colleagues at the December 7th meeting, but unfortunately the initial plan was rejected by the Army Corps of Engineers. And that kind of takes us back to, I won't say, we have to reset, basically. It was very disappointing, but more to come on that. So there's been an ongoing project, a joint partnership through the school district and our police department regarding a parking situation around Columbia High School. So working with Columbia High School, the school district, they've alleviated some of the pressure by doing some striping of parking spaces across from the gym, also relocating, as I understand, the buses back to the original location. And then from a township perspective, our chief, who is the appropriate authority in the coming weeks, will be sending out a communication through the school district and to our community about the ordinance that's on the books regarding parking in that area. Again, I have to emphasize that, you know, some residents want to push, blame the kids. Yes, the kids are parking there, but the ordinance doesn't discriminate against our children, our kids, high school or not. So the ordinance is for everyone. So just be mindful of that. And then also the chief is working with the school districts to set up a traffic flow pattern, which he's done successfully at Clinton, successfully at Tuscan, and successfully at MMS through the years. So more to come on that. In regards to the next steps related to our fields, I want to thank everyone who sent in their information to join the task force. I sent a communication on Wednesday. I'm in the process of building a survey. It's taking time, but it's on my docket. And so the next communication will be the survey for everyone to fill out so we can start to put together the construct of some of the subcommittees there. And then also, I just want to emphasize, it's important for all of us to do the right thing. And what I mean by that is please get vaccinated. I got my booster on Friday. And if you can, please get your booster. It's super important. And it's something that we all need to do. So please, please, please get your booster. And then finally, I just want to take a second to recognize on Saturday morning I had the opportunity to speak with and be a part of the culmination of the Girls on a Run season. And I have to say it was probably the highlight of my month. It was great to be out there with our young girls who were finishing something that was great. They're accomplishing a goal which they set for themselves way back in beginning of September, and everyone finished. It was beautiful at the end. One of the young girls who was fighting a health issue, she finished, and all her teammates joined her for the end. So it was really a touching moment. So that's what community and really what love is all about. So congratulations to all the girls from Girls on a Run. And that is my report. All right, so now we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our discussion items. And we'll start with discussion item number 1, which is the spray park. And I'll yield the floor to Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Barnett, can you put up that photo? So at our November 3rd meeting, Mr. Lembrecht asked about the status of the spray park, and we reported that the Engineering, Public Works, and Planning Committee was requested to take another look at the site, at the park, from an engineering perspective. We met on November 10th, and this is the spray park. This is not exactly, but this is the concept. We met on November 10th, and the majority of the members of the Engineering and Public Works Committee, after hearing from the engineer that there's no engineering difference in the sites under consideration, that we have support locating the spray park on the tennis court site. So that is our recommendation, and we were to report that tonight. Thank you. You could take the picture down. We will report that tonight, and my sense is that we ought to just pass a motion that moves forward and authorizes Mr. Jimes and to move forward with the spray park on the tennis court site. And I would move that. Second, or whatever.
Well, can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
You can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. DeLuca, so my understanding is the spray park, the footprint of the proposed spray park won't take up the entire footprint of the current tennis courts or former tennis courts. Is that right?
That was what was conveyed to us from Ms. Mancuso. Yes, and it was her intention at some point in the future to put a tennis court, pickleball court there.
Okay, because, my understanding and the way I've been thinking about this all along is, we want, at the end of the day, and I realize we can't have everything we want, and we certainly can't have it as soon as we want it, but we want to have the spray park, we want to eventually have a tennis court, pickleball court, and we'd like to preserve some green space. And, and we currently have an area that has some green space when we have the current tennis courts, which really haven't been usable now for, like I said, about 9 years. And, my perspective has always been, as long as we can find a way to Tetris in the three things we want into that space, I don't really, as long as the engineers are okay and we have the money to pay for it, I just want to make sure we do those things. So it sounds like we're going to go ahead and move forward on the spray ground on a portion of the tennis court footprint, leaving a portion of that footprint that going forward, when we have the funding, could in the future be a tennis court, pickleball court, something like that. And we're not going into the space that currently is sort of green space between the skate park and the tennis court. We're not touching right now. Is that all correct?
That's correct.
All right. I'm a yes on all this then. So thank you.
If I could just add that I know there's a motion in a second, but part of that moving forward would be, just I want it for the record, would be to authorize the engineer to begin to prepare bid specs. And assuming the vote passes, I'll have a resolution to that effect, memorializing that at the next meeting, but I would like to authorize him as soon as possible to get going on those bid specs in advance of the next meeting.
So I have no problem with the location, other than I feel like some things, I feel like we're voting on a location and we're not really sure what's happening. So I'm not quite sure what the motion is for. Is it just that the location is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of the tennis courts, or we're ripping out all 3 tennis courts and putting in the spray ground and then locating somewhere down the road? We don't really have a plan for that. Am I right?
So I believe, unless Mr. Jimes has a better answer, that what has been told to me is that the tennis courts will be ripped up. 2/3 of the tennis courts will cover the spray park, and the other third would be reserved to do a tennis court, pickleball court going forward.
Correct.
Right.
Is that correct, Mr. Jimes?
Yes.
He said correct. So what is, I guess I'm still not grasping it. So to the extent that the location is fine with me, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Are we leaving one tennis court that's still in ill repair as a placeholder for when we get the funding somewhere down the road to fix it? Or are we ripping out all 3 and then putting the spray ground in one section and then just leaving the rest as mud, gravel, planting? That's what I don't understand. I feel like it's incomplete, and that's where I've been frustrated with this whole thing.
So I think that's above our pay grade. I think that the engineer and the consultant we have has to go in, they have to go in there and do an assessment. If there's a portion that can be saved and salvaged and made into a tennis court, then there's no point in ripping it down. As a lay person, my sense is you have to rip the whole thing down and start over, but I don't know that. What I think what we're proposing here is move forward with this process of locating the spray park in the tennis court area. The situation or the condition of that third one the third section there will have to be assessed by our professionals, and they will come back to us with a recommendation with a price tag also.
All right, as I said at Engineering Public Works, my biggest concern is that we're going to spend more money because we're not doing it all at once. So that's why I asked that we get OSTF funds requested for the tennis court, so it can happen in conjunction with the spray park all at the same time, because undoubtedly that would be more cost effective for mobilization of units to do that construction and so on.
I think we can talk about that next year in the Open Space Trust Fund. Absolutely.
I think add it as an option in the bid spec just to see how that might turn out.
Correct.
Okay, I'd be more comfortable with that rather than sort of this partial thing that I'm hearing.
I'll do that. I'll inform the engineer to do that.
And that'll be part of my motion.
Which I seconded.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing that, Mr. Desiderio, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Well, with that caveat, I'll vote yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. Luca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McKee.
Yes.
And I just want to say something that was said earlier about the tennis courts, if I just might, because I was the one who said that it was a policy of the Township Committee, and it was a discussion. I'll tell you what it was about. That for a long time in Maplewood, our recreation resources for tennis were being directed to Memorial Park and Walter Park. And there was a confluence of tennis courts in mid-Maplewood, and all the parks around town that had tennis courts, they were cruddy. And we were told that we didn't need them. And so we said that as a matter of fairness, so that people all over Maplewood would have at least one tennis court, that we would work as a policy to keep one tennis court in each park. So we have a functioning tennis court in DeHart, in Borden. We have no functioning tennis courts in Maple Crest, but having one meets that standard of trying to balance. And we even have one up in Orchard Park. So the idea of long ago of just putting our resources in Memorial and Walter, that's what prompted the decision to balance out the tennis courts, because we knew people around town wanted to play tennis. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. And also, I would just say thank you to the Rec Advisory Committee for putting together that narrative, and they emailed it to it as well. I thought it was very well done, and I do remember being at that meeting, and I remember saying it was going to be where we decided to put it tonight, and I'm glad we finally got there. So, I just want to recognize the efforts of the Rec Advisory Committee on that regard. All right, let's move on to discussion item number 2, which is DeHart Park evaluation of field conditions. Mr. DeLuca and Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first meeting after the referendum was on November 10th of the Engineering Public Works, and we discussed with our engineer slash Director of Department of Public Works, Mr. Kittner, what information he needed, what information he had, and what resources he had available to move forward in thinking about reconstructing the field from not an artificial field, but a grass field. We were told that there are no resources currently. His department has no money. He is, at this point, does not have sufficient data to make any kind of a decision, and that he would like to have resources so that he could study the condition of the field, so that he could build his base of knowledge, he and his colleagues in engineering and public works, as to what was installed, how it was installed, what are the soils, what are the soils, what is the composition of the soils, what is the grading there, what is the drainage, what is the irrigation. He really needs to be brought up to scale, or up to speed rather, so that he can work from a technical perspective, or with the technical aspects, as we begin community conversation about what's there, because he just doesn't know. And we're going to be relying on our professionals, and they're going to go out and get professionals to work with them. But he just needs to know that just what the condition of the field is. He just can't make any judgment right now. So we talked about the possibility of allocating some open space trust fund monies to do this. And Mr. Daffis was going to reach out and have that discussion.
Right. So I agree that we, moving forward, as we engage with stakeholders and community members and advocates, we definitely need technical assistance here. I mean, what we do know is that we need improvements, significant improvements that are sustainable and long-term. But what those are and what the current condition of the field is, as Mr. DeLuca said, we really should have that technical knowledge and not wait to do that. So I did propose this idea to the chair of the OSTF, and the chair relayed back to me that they proposed it to the rest of the committee. I don't think there was a formal vote about whether or not they would agree to spend whatever balance there is in OSTF or some portion thereof to hire such a consultant, but they did relay back that they had some concerns. Rightfully so, reasonably, the OSTF has committed to DHEART maintenance and on an annual basis, and it hasn't really gotten us anywhere. We've hired various consultants and experts through the years, as you all know. And so they were concerned about, spending another 49 or 50K. I think this is different though. This is not about maintenance ad hoc. This is about, really getting in there and seeing what the soil is like and what needs to be done. It may need to be regraded entirely. So that's what this is about. Again, I don't have a formal vote. I think the chair is with us if they'd like to say anything. I'm not putting the chair on the spot, but this is what I heard back, is that the committee had some reservations about our using OSTF funds in this manner at this time.
Would the chair like to, and again, not putting the chair on the spot, but would the chair like to elaborate more on their concerns?
I believe they might be, Mr. Mayor. They raised their hand. Mr. Nelson is with us.
Mr. Watts or Ms. Barnett, please bring Mr. Nelson over. There he is. Good evening. Well, Mr. Nelson, you're still on mute. There you are. Oh, wait, you're still on mute.
Got it.
Good to see you.
This was as hard as getting into the meeting. Dean pretty much brought you up to speed. This caught us off guard quite a bit because we only heard about it last week. And we have not yet begun meetings reviewing formal proposals. And my first question to Dean was, couldn't this just wait, since we're about to go into the budget process with a formal proposal in front of us, and that we would like to review this along with any other proposals that we receive or requests for projects, so that we could do so in the greater context of what else is going on. So that was kind of the root of the discussion we had, since it really caught us off guard and we didn't really have any information about this at all. And just was hoping we could, have it be more part of the formal review process.
I think one of the concerns, Mr. Nelson, is that if we don't move now, we're not going to be moving until either the cold months when we really can't get in there and do that and get some soil samples. If we can move now, we can get something done before the ground freezes. And otherwise, we're just going to have to wait. And I think it would be a lost opportunity for our engineer to gather the information he needs. I completely understand about, we spent so much money already on this thing. But, it would be, I think, a real disadvantage if we didn't get prepared, so that when we have a plan and what we're going to do, that we're still waiting to get the baseline information.
Mr. DeLuca, can I just ask one question? This was done, don't we have past samples, past work that was done, past information? Like when this was built, there's got to be some record of it.
And I think that's what, I don't think that the engineer feels that whatever there's around is he's able to work with. I think he's looking for new baseline information. I mean, we have some blueprints and stuff like that, but I think he's looking for new stuff.
Well, I would ask Mr. Jimes to see what can be found as to what we already have, because I know that, we had soil stuff, it's clay, it's this or that. There's got to be some information to the extent that could either reduce the cost if it's just boring new samples as opposed to a full-blown study of what's going on there. I mean, seems like I'm find out some information we've already have.
I'm certain that Mr. Kittner would, if he had something, he wouldn't spend money needlessly. I think the question is, are we going to give him resources so that what he doesn't have and what he needs, is he going to be able to do that? It's just a question of whether we do it now or whether we do it later. It's got to get done at some point. Our
Right.
professionals have to be brought up to speed so that they know what, when we ask them questions. Right now, he's telling us he cannot give us an analysis of that field.
If the expert is saying he can't do the work, and this is a pressing issue for us, we've already gone through a pretty divisive, referendum here, and I think any person on any side wants to see us be invested in this. I think we spend the money and get our expert the resources that he needs to do what needs to get done. I don't want to waste time. We want to get this. We want to have all the information, all the data. We can leverage the old data as incremental data, but I think we spend the funds and we get this done so we know what we need to do sooner than later.
That was the thing. Yes, thank you.
Is it possible for at least to respect part of the process here to put this all together in a formal proposal and then give it to us so that I can send it around to the committee and try to get a more intelligent review of the information? Because that's the core of the issue right now. I will share, though, that one of the members that was raising some of the questions asked, had nothing along these lines been done in order to make the decision to go to synthetic turf?
No.
Well, that was one of the issues. It's like, how could you have made that decision without having some kind of assessment? So I'm just telling you, sharing with you some of the concerns that are coming from some of the committee members.
Well, that seems more like a policy than a financial decision, correct?
This is always policy for us because we're not about to say yes or no to spend money if we don't understand the full context.
Well, I think from our perspective is that our engineer, who is the most appropriate authority of engineering in the township of Maplewood, is asking for resources to do his job. And that's how I see it, unless my colleagues all disagree. And I think I agree we can put together a formal request, but we're trying to empower the experts who we pay salaries for to do the job to serve the community. And that is the ask. So Mr. Daffis and Mr. Lindbergh, you want to jump in, please do.
Yeah, I would, Mr. Mayor. And I guess, we can all look at the same result or the same numbers or the same vote and interpret it differently. But, one of the things that I come away with from this is the community didn't want us to rush into anything, in terms of DeHart. And, based on what I've been hearing and what I hear tonight from Mr. Nelson and some of the questions that Ms. Adams raised, I just don't know that I'm ready to vote on anything tonight in terms of moving forward. I think if asked to vote for any item, I'm going to vote no, just because I don't have enough information about what we already have, what we don't have, or where we're going. I'll preserve my editorial comments about what the community should have done if they really wanted to get these fields playable quicker, but I'm not ready to vote tonight to spend more money over there until we know what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Lindbergh.
Thanks, Mayor. So I don't think we're all disagreeing here, frankly. What I'm hearing is that everyone agrees that assessment should be done, a current assessment. An assessment should have been done, but it hasn't been done, and it needs to be done. So we have agreement on that. I would just ask Mr. Nelson, if we were to send over a written proposal, which is essentially going to say what we've been talking about, we need an assessment, we need technical assistance before we move forward with anything else at the field, and we need to hire a consultant to provide that. And this is generally what it's going to cost. May we use whatever, or some portion of the balance of the 2021 OSTF funds. It's essentially going to be that. So how much time does the committee need to review that in good faith so that we can make a decision on this next month? We have 2 TC meetings next month. If we can make a decision on this, then we can also have the opportunity to get current soil samples and such before it really gets cold. So I think we can meet everyone's needs and everyone's concerns in this matter. Mr. Nelson, how much time do you think you would need on your end if you were received such a letter, let's say later this week?
I can't answer for the rest of the committee right here, right now, but I would guess that there's only five of us currently on the committee. We could probably get back and forth with the discussion, at least via email, possibly have a meeting. And I can't imagine we couldn't come back with something to you, Dean, within a week.
Great. So
Well, let me backpedal that. It is Thanksgiving week we're coming up to, so I would, past Thanksgiving.
Sure. By December 7th is our next TC meeting. So if we tabled this until then, if I have support for that from my colleagues, then we can alleviate everyone's concerns and be fair here and totally transparent about everything. I mean, certainly we're not going to relive, the accusations that there's no process or the process is wrong and we're rushing to judgment. We're not going to do that again. We are not going to do that again. So I propose that we table this for December 7th. In the meantime, we will send a proposal to the OSTF committee. Do I have support for that?
I would support that, Deputy Mayor, and I would also just say that, in the meantime, if maybe we can, find out, maybe, task Mr. Johns or Ms. Barnett with finding out, what it is that we do have and to what extent, maybe it's outdated or it's not adequate or it's, it misses the point of what we need. Because I'm just hearing, and Ms. Adams raised some good questions tonight that, some of this, and it may be that, some of what we had was a square peg and what we have now is a round hole, but I just like to know that, so if Mr. Johns can, figure that out with Ms. Barnett's help and talking to Mr. Kittner, I would appreciate that. And I think that's something else that we can realistically accomplish before we meet on December 7th.
So Mr. Lindbergh, can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
Okay, so if we were to authorize the money right now, which we have every power to do, I mean, it's all in our power. So the final decision doesn't get made by the Open Space Trust Fund, it gets made here. So if we were to say to Mr. Kittner, you have up to $40,000, let's just say that, and he was to go back and say, I have a round sample and I have a round hole, so I don't need to do that sample. Or I have a round sample and I have a square hole, and so I need to do that sample. How would that make your decision any different?
I would know more.
You don't have confidence that he would use his best judgment as a professional to not waste money?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's too many questions right now, and I don't think we've given, we haven't even given this to the Open Space Trust Fund, and we're asking to use the money. And I think, even if the decision is ultimately with us, I think we should at least give them the courtesy of reviewing the proposal. And, I don't see what the rush is. I think if the community was in a rush to do something at DHAR, we would have done other things. So I'm not in a rush to do something here. So, but I'm only one vote.
No, I'd agree with that. I mean, we're talking a couple weeks, to Mr. Davis's point. And in fairness, I'm on the Engineering Public Works Committee, and I was there, and I didn't get the sense that Mr. Kittner had researched all the records that he had. He likely has survey, construction documents that would determine where the drainage is, where the pipes are, and then maybe it's $3,000-4,000 we spend to get soil borings. I mean, there was not like, he was not informed, in my opinion, about what is in the files, which in every engineering department I've been, are vast. So I think more research needs to be done. And we're talking about possibly getting OSTF input over the next couple of weeks, in fairness to them, because that's the process, and then basing our decision on what information we have.
So then I think really it comes down, before we get Mr. Nelson and his team involved, we really need Mr. Kittner to put together this scope, because he's the engineer, right? He's the resident expert of all of us here. He's the smartest guy in the room when it comes to engineering. So he needs to scope out what he needs, put that together, work with Mr. Gimes, and then that can be disseminated to us and then subsequently to Mr. Nelson. But I think that's the first step, right? If he will know what he needs, what the ask is, what the scope is, and let him put that together, which technically truncates your time, Mr. Nelson, because I'm not sure how fast Mr. Kittner can do this. I can't speak for Mr. Kittner or Hassan or his team. That's something that Mr. Gimes will have to follow up with and follow up with us. So maybe it's the 7th, maybe it's the 21st.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can commit to 2 weeks from now, frankly, because now we're also rushing Mr. Kittner.
Well, I can speak briefly to that. The more thought through the proposal is, the faster it will be on our end to review it and discuss it. But the more questions there are left open with the initial proposal, the longer it'll take us to get to the point where we can make any kind of decision. And we fully appreciate the fact that we are just advisory. We are not in control of this in the end. But again, for the sake of process, the more time that is spent putting the proposal together with a lot of background as to here's what we know, here's what we don't know, whether it's Mr. Kittner or somebody in his staff, that would be far more productive in terms of us reviewing it. So yeah, if this pushes it off, you don't get it to us for a couple of weeks and then we get it to you and then you don't review it until just before the holiday, then that's the way it goes.
Right. So I think at this point, we can't, Mr. Dabbs, we can't, move forward with the 7th or the 21st. We just don't know. We need to let the expert do his job and his team. And then once he circles back with Mr. DeLuca's committee, who you're a member of, and Ms. Adams, and gives us an idea, then we can see where that scopes out and then go from there. So will be to be determined.
Noted, Mayor, but I do think that there is a sense of urgency here, right?
I said that earlier.
Yeah.
I said that. That's the first thing I said.
Yeah. I mean, come on, let's be real here.
Jesus Christ.
If there's a sense of urgency, then we should say to Kittner, here's the green light. Because all we're doing is we're putting it off. And if you want to put it off, and there's a majority puts it off, that's fine. But let's talk real. The thing here is that we're putting off. We're not giving him the resources he needs. I will tell you right now, I don't think Mr. Kittner is going to be the person doing this work. He is overloaded. He's going to have to bring someone in. So he's not even prepared to go out. He doesn't have the resources to go out and get anybody right now. But that's fine. If that's what you want to do, and that's the majority, I understand. Listen, I'm into arithmetic. I understand this. So if you got the 3 votes, then let's table it and to the future till we're ready.
Yeah, I mean, my vote is just not, I actually don't think it's a matter of urgency. So don't count me in that, in that area. I'm just, I'm not ready to vote tonight because I don't think we're ready to vote tonight, and I don't think this is a matter of urgency. So I guess I'm a no either way.
There you go.
Okay.
So I think at this point, I mean, there's probably no need to vote. we can just table this because it's nothing going to happen any earlier than the 7th. But I do think Mr. DeLuca brings a good point. Mr. Kidner is jammed. I mean, this is construction season for us. We just had, I mean, for the first half of the engineering plant public works meeting I went to, we went through tons and tons of projections regarding traffic calming, and there's a lot going on. And we have a very small staff that runs a lot, that does a lot of lifting for our township. So,
Right, but look, realistically as well, right? Realistically as well, of course, Mr. Kidner is not going to do the work himself. He's going to hire a consultant to do the work. But when he reaches out to the consultant, he's got to tell him something, right? He's going to give him a scope of work, right? That's all that the OSTF is asking for. They're asking for a scope of work and what it's going to cost. We can't even tell OSTF right now, this moment at 9:10 p.m. this evening, how much of the money we want to use from OSTF. We're saying maybe it's 40, maybe it's 35, maybe it's more than the 49,400K that's in the balance right now. All they're asking for is that. This doesn't have to be. This is why I think we can get this done sooner rather than later. This does not have to be, this is not a bid spec. This is not that level of detail. It is knowing what we want the consultant to do. What would the scope of services of that consultant be? And that way the OSTF committee can look at this and say, oh, okay, this is what they're looking to do. And maybe we have information from before, but
so agreeing with you, Mr. Daffis, that Mr. Kidner will outsource this. We still don't know the timeline which he will do that in, right?
And I'm not sure, Mr. Daffis, that he will not outsource the scope of work like we do with Matrix when we have an environmental. He doesn't do the scope. He doesn't do the bid or to put the quote package or bid package together. Mr. Kidner may hire someone to put together what has to be studied.
okay, but even
Okay, so that's not the person, not the entity doing the study, but he may have to bring someone in to say, okay, we got this park, you're the expert, write up the specs so that we could do the study. But look, Mr. Desiderio, you're still here, right? I think I made a motion, is that correct?
You did.
Okay, and it was seconded, right?
Yep.
It was.
Okay, and there's a motion to table,
Yep.
which supersedes my motion.
Yes, it is.
So why don't we just move forward? Why don't we call the question and just vote?
Yeah. So Mr. Daffis, you made a motion. Was it second?
Second.
There you go. All right. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Desiderio, you're calling the roll on Mr. Daffis's motion to table this until December 7th.
Understood. Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
No.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
No.
Okay, passes 3-2.
Thank you. That was fun. All right, moving on to discussion item number 3, which is the report on the Cannabis Review Committee. Mr. DeLuca.
You're muted, Mr. DeLuca.
I thought you didn't want to hear from me anymore. I'm going to share this with Mr. Daffis because we co-chaired this. And Ms. Barnett, I'm going to ask you to put up the draft ordinance in a moment, but I just want to thank our team. We had a few meetings to go through this, and it was Mr. Daffis, myself, Mr. Jimes, Ms. Barnett was there, Ms. De Palma, Candace Davenport, our health officer, Mr. Desiderio, and Tree Januza from our planning board representative. So we were the team that had some conversations about this. We looked at a lot of other municipalities, what others have drafted, what they're thinking. We talked about Maplewood, we talked about our existing ordinance with alternative treatment centers. And what we've come up with is a draft of an ordinance that I'd like you to put up now, Ms. Barnett. And then there are a couple of decision points that we want to go over with the township, a few of them, not a couple, a few of them. So So I just as a sort of a threshold issue, we do make the statement that we want to have cannabis facilities in Maplewood. And unless we're off base, I think that was the decision by the Township Committee. So having that threshold already decided, we moved forward to put some meat on the bone, if you will. So what we're talking about, if you would go to page 8, please, if you can do that easily. You're getting me, getting me dizzy here. Keep going, I think. Okay, here we go. I think you have to go back some. Or, okay, great. I'm sorry, keep going. Yeah, keep going. This is not as easy as.
That's page 8. Well, was.
All right, go. See if you can get to page 8. Let me just say what we have. So there are different classes of licenses. Here we go. Thank you. There are 6 different classes of licenses, and it goes from cultivator, manufacturer, wholesaler, distributor, retailer, which is what most of us think of, because that's where you actually go in and purchase the product. And then there's delivery. Those are people who purchase the product at a retail center and deliver it to your home. So they're your agent, if you will. So what we've come up with is a recommendation of 14 total licenses, 1 each in cultivator, manufacturer, wholesaler, and distributor, 4 retail licenses, and 5 delivery licenses. And we think that this is a good balance. It will allow us to utilize our entire town and the various zones of our town, from commercial industrial zones to retail zones. And we think that this would go forward. The next page, if you go to 10, our application process and the evaluation, thank you, is we would have a number of points that you would get based on your experience, whether you've been a responsible employer, whether you're hiring in Maplewood, whether you've a resident here or have had a business over the years, if you have good environmental impact and sustainability plans, if there's a community benefit, if you have a commitment to diversity, that you would get up to 60 points. And this assumes that there'd be competition. If there's no competition, then we would assess the company based on these, but maybe there wouldn't be a point system because there's nothing to compare it to. But if you had more than one applicant, you would use this point system, and then you would come up to 60 points. And then at the end of that 60 points, if you look here on the right, there are additional points for being a social equity business, a diversely owned business, a micro business, or if you have an existing alternative treatment center in Maplewood. And then you would get additional points. So we recognize sort of the standard points that everybody would get and the criteria that we would weigh everyone. And then we are looking to give additional points if you meet a social good, or if you've invested in Maplewood already as an alternative treatment center, or if you are a micro business, which the state has an interest in promoting very small micro businesses to allow everyone to get in on this, to this business, the cannabis business. If you look right here, the operating hours, we're suggesting a change. Right now, our alternative treatment centers are open from 8 in the morning till 7 at night, Monday through Saturday. On Sunday, it's 12 to 7. What we are recommending is 8 in the morning till 10. And that is consistent with the proposal that's coming out of South Orange. We looked at other towns. Newark, for example, is 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. On weekends, that's 8 a.m. to 11. West Orange is 8 to 7. And I mentioned South Orange is 8 to 10. We thought that we really did not want to disadvantage the retailers in Maplewood. And again, with delivery, if we were not to have our retailers open, then a customer who lives in Maplewood could just call a retailer in Newark or Irvington or South Orange that would be open till 10 o'clock and have it delivered. So we thought that making it uniform 8 to 10, Monday through Sunday, was the better way to go. If you go to page 11, we have fees here, and you'll see the fees basically are $2,500 for initial application fee and $2,500 on an annual registration. That goes right to Maplewood. And we have talked about doing some companion decision-making, whether it's by ordinance or by resolution, an annual resolution, as to how much of this, these fees and this income that gets generated would be used in Maplewood for a social purpose. And we've talked about dedicating some of this money for that. It really shouldn't, it doesn't go in the ordinance, but I think on an annual basis, there can be a determination based on how many licenses we have as to how we want to allocate the money to do something. If you look on the to the left of this page here, again, we're saying that no cannabis can be smoked, eaten anywhere in a public place in Maplewood. You can't sell alcohol at a cannabis facility. The state law allows a cannabis consumption area. It's basically a place in an establishment where you can go in and buy your product and you can actually use it there. We are saying that we do not allow that. And the only town that I could see that has it so far is Newark. And I'm not sure about Irvington, but I know Newark has it. And in fact, Newark's consumption areas are open till 2 in the morning. If you go to the next page, we're talking here about tax. Thank you. The tax, it's a 2% tax on all sales. It's a 1% tax on a wholesaler. So a wholesaler sells it to a retailer or a distributor, and they pay 1%. But on an ultimate sale, on the other classes, it's a 2%. There's no tax on a delivery because a person buying it pays the 2% at the retail level. Keep going to page 14, we get to zoning. Here we go. Thank you. So again, cultivating is in our commercial industrial area, which is primarily Rutgers and Newark Way. Our special light industrial area, that is Camptown Road that we share with Irvington, the old Olympic Park, and redevelopment area 2. Primarily the old Maplewood Building Specialties. And that would cover both cultivating, manufacturing, wholesale, and distributing. Retailers would be neighborhood business, Parkside, pedestrian, all of our retail business districts. It would also allow redevelopment area 3, which is on Springfield Avenue, and that's near the Walgreens. The Baker Street redevelopment area, that's Baker Street, the old Toomey site, and the post office redevelopment area. Those are all potential sites. And then delivery would be anywhere. We thought that delivery could be an entrepreneurial activity where someone who wants to run this business out of their home, they can't have any employees there. They just want to be a delivery business where they go pick up from point A and bring it to the resident. So we thought that as long as they met all the home-based business requirements, then they could be allowed in a residential area and they could be allowed in a business and an office area. And then we talked about buffer zones. The buffer zone for a house of worship is 250 feet and from a school is 500 feet. And then one cannabis retail establishment from another is 1,000 feet. With these buffer zones, the places that are available to us, all of Maplewood Avenue is available, all of Springfield Avenue, except, and I'll just use these stores to make it easy, except from where the Walgreens is, south of Walgreens to Quick Check. That has 2 categories there. That's the buffer with the church across the street and the school. It would not be where the bread stand is because there is a synagogue there on the corner of Menzel, and 250 feet would carve out that neighborhood business district there. There's an area across from the high school parking lot where the Maplewood Pizzeria is. That would be blocked out. That would be buffered out also. But most everywhere else in Maplewood would be eligible for retail. Irvington Avenue, Springfield Avenue, most of it. Even Milburn Avenue, because that would be highway business. Retail's allowed there. And so that's that. Those are the sort of the prime points. Certainly could take questions. Maybe you could, Ms. Barnett, you could drop this so we could see each other and deal with questions that way.
I have a couple questions. Did the zone, Mr. DeLuca, does Ridgewood Road?
So that is a residential area.
Where
there's-
yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
Up there, Ridgewood is residential. Pearson Mill is residential. And
Okay,
Elmwood is residential.
so those
So
are
those are pre-existing. So those are pre-existing businesses and residential. So they would, if in order to locate there, you'd have to go through a variance process.
Okay.
Mr. DeLuca, we also discussed that Boynton Avenue area. Boynton
by Elmwood.
No, Boynton and Jacoby,
Yeah.
Yeah, by the bread stand.
because
Yes.
because of synagogue.
Yes.
Right,
yes.
yeah, he
Yeah.
mentioned that one.
Yeah.
What about Elmwood and Boynton, that corner? Is
That's
that
also residential.
Okay. I just have a question about the, I think it's page 11, operating, section 8, XXX8 or whatever, regarding the security, having full-time security. Is that only until it's federally legal? Is this is mostly based on because it's a cash business, right? Not because they're selling pot.
This is based on the state
The state.
rules.
They require it.
Yes.
Okay, and is that because of the cash though, or is it because?
I'm not exact. I don't.
Why would we treat it any different than liquor?
I don't know.
Okay. And then, I already asked, West Parker redevelopment, that's all residential, but does that allow, I can't remember, is that redevelopment plan allow for potential retail or no?
I don't
7
think we've
West
written
Parker.
it yet.
Haven't written it yet.
We haven't
Right,
written it yet.
okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. DeLuca, I have a few questions. And first and foremost, thank you. This is really a well-done document to you, to Mr. Daffis, to Mr. Newser, to the entire team. It is a lot of thought and process put into this and good definitions. So I'll start with page 7. First paragraph, and this is more of a word here, number 2, or double I think we should add the word total, where it says are at a time initial application submitted and based on preceding year's income, a member of a household that has a total household income that is 80% or less. So I just think we could just add that word total in there. That would just kind of solidify that one statement. I agree with it, but just the word total. On page 9, section D, the applicant shall submit to the satisfaction of the Township Committee proof of financial capability to open and operate the cannabis establishment for which an applicant is seeking a license. Standards for proof of financial capability shall be determined by the Township Committee. I just wanted to talk about that part. Like, how do we think we should go about that proof of capability? What are we thinking about in that regard?
So if we just were to use the ABC application, we do ask them where their financing is coming from. We ask them how much they've, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Desdare, but we ask them to provide that financial information to us.
We certainly can ask them those questions. Yes, they have to tell us where they're getting the money for the license. Most of the time they say from private funds. Really, you want to make sure they're not getting it from some, not that anybody's going to tell you, some illegal source, but that's really the basis for the question. And of course, they're going to have been qualified by the state, and the state's going to also have to make a determination if they have financial resources to do this.
And our standard, Mayor, might be just that we'll accept what the state says.
Right, because they're required to fill that information in as part of their application to the state.
Right. But this at least allows us, if we wanted to add something to that we would be able to say, we take what the state gives you, state is giving us plus ABC if we had to.
Okay. Cool. I'm staying on page 9. I'll call it section 7, evaluation of application.
Mhm.
The first statement, in the event there are multiple applicants for a limited number of licenses, the township shall evaluate all applicants on the following criteria. I agree with that, but I think we should add in no particular order or rank, so that we have that information in there.
Okay, said that.
So it's on that page there. So, and then moving on to page 10, where we have the 60-point scale. I just had a couple of questions here. First, I'll start with the additional points. So I understand how we scaled out the 60 points. The additional points though equal to 65. So my question is, if I score low on the total points, but I knock it out the box in the additional points, and I think the key points, from A all the way to H are some very significant, important points. But should we look at the scale and maybe truncate some of the ability you can score on additional points, 15, 15, 15, 20? Maybe they should all be 5 and should be scaled better. I'm wondering if you could just score on these additional points, diversely owned business, and you're already ATC, then some of the other things that are equally important and at the top, you kind of truncate those. I don't know, we can look at this maybe and none of the other points are higher than 10, and these are like 15, 15, 15, 20. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it does make sense. I think we were trying to kind of promote a robust, diverse ownership pool. And so we put a little extra on. I think you're right. We maybe put too much, but we put extra on these things because we would like, as opposed to sort of a quote unquote traditionally large scale white owned company, we would like to see a diverse company. So by being heavy with these points down here, it kind of bumps them up higher than a traditional company.
Okay, I see that logic. Maybe we'll find some balance because from my eye, I'm like,
Well, what would you recommend? 10?
I would say, I had 5, 5, 5 across. But if we wanted to make it 40 points, doesn't add right. Well, we could do 10. I would say I would cap them all at 10. That way 60 plus 40 is 100. So I would just say at least reduce them 5 points each.
Okay.
Which respectfully get you 100 points.
And we're all going to have to agree on this. So that's I think I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that too. I mean, like Mr. DeLuca said, we wanted to really emphasize that we want to do the right thing here. We want to emphasize our preference for the social equity piece here and the minority owned and the micro businesses, which the state allows us to do. And the state's going to do that too in their review of the application. Right. They're definitely going to, prefer these extra points, if you will. But I agree with you. It doesn't need to be 15.
Okay.
We got a little excited. So 10 is fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And then, so I'm good with that rest of 10. I'm good with 11. And then I had one question on, I'll call it section XXX12, the penalty of violation, where we talked about the civil fine of $2,000. And then the next paragraph or next sentence says, each day that a violation is committed, exists or continues shall be deemed a separate and distinct offense. So I guess my first question is this a daily cumulative offense?
Yes.
So every day is 2,000.
If you violate something, you can get summoned every day, correct?
Okay. All right. Well, this every day is 2,000.
This is consistent with really most of our other ordinances.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I was my second question, I'll make it mute because I was going to say, since the fees are 2,500, why don't we just make that 2,500 too?
Because the maximum fee we can charge is $2,000 for a municipal violation.
All right, we're together, and that's it. Really great job. Good read and great work. So those are my suggestions.
Mr. Lembrick, Ms. Adams, anything else?
I don't have any questions. I would agree with the mayor that, that I think given the maximum, higher up was 10 points for any one area, that I think making those additional points, cap 10 makes sense. And it seems as though we might have some consensus on that. But yeah, otherwise I concur that this is a great job. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Daffis. Thank you, Ms. Denuser, and everyone else who has been a part of putting this together. I appreciate it. And all of this looks A-okay to me. I look forward to voting for it.
All right.
Ms. Adams.
Anything else, Ms. Adams? Okay, so if Mr. Desiderio, we would, the idea is to draft this so that we can introduce it on the 7th of December. And then it would go to the planning board on the 14th and come back to us on the 21st.
Okay.
Do you need anything more? Do you need a motion to do that, or is this good enough?
You just directed me to do it. That's not a problem. Nope, nothing else.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca, and thank you, Mr. Daffis. All right, moving on to discussion item number 4, report from Code Committee regarding zone review permit. Mr. Daffis.
Thanks, Mayor. This one should be much easier. So we received a recommendation from our code enforcement, our zoning department, about increasing the fee that we charge for our zoning permit. As you know, a couple of years ago, we implemented a very comprehensive and uniform process regarding zoning review. It used to kind of be a little bit loosey-goosey, but it is not anymore. Everyone is required to fill out the form, and what triggers after that is a very comprehensive and intensive feedback. We call people, we work with them, we look at their plans, they amend them, we call them back. It is basically a lot of hand-holding, as we should do, and it's great customer service, but our fee currently doesn't reflect that. It's only $25, which is way below what, not very competitive, what other municipalities are charging. So there was a recommendation to go from 25 to 100. I think that's a bit steep, from 25 anyway. So, I will open the floor for discussion if it's 100 or if it's closer to 75. I would move 75. I think that's fair, again, in comparison to what other municipalities around us are charging.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I would. I think it's too high, and I'll tell you what I'm concerned about: the unintended consequence. Right now, if you're a very small operation, and I've talked to people, and I say, look, for $25, you can get this response. So they say, okay, $25. You start putting it like 75, it does become a disincentive, and I'm concerned, like I said at one of our meetings, that somehow people are going to go and say, hey, look, I really don't want to spend $75. Can I just do this? And it's going to revert back to the system now where we're talking about it. I'm wondering if there's a way that we could keep the fee lower, but extend the response period so that it isn't so hectic. Because right now we say $25 and you get a response in 10 days. And if we went somewhere like $40 and you said you get a response in 20 days.
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I understand what you just said. You spoke English, but I'm trying to understand practically what you're getting at.
Well, I'm just concerned that we're going to have people either say, I'm not going to spend the money. It's like, we talk to people about joining the chamber or joining this, and they don't want to pay the money. So someone who doesn't have a business, we're asking them now to pay 3 times or even 4 times what we asked them before. And it's going to become a disincentive. They're going to say, well, I'm not going to bother with it. Or they're going to come up there to the building office and they're going to say, look, I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to fill this out, but I'm just thinking of opening an ice cream shop on this corner. What do you think about it? And that's what we're trying to avoid. So by keeping it low, it's sort of an automatic. We say, no, we can't talk to you about it. Here you get a response for $25.
That's fair, but we do have people that don't do it now, even though it's $25. We catch them all the time on the back end, and we have to say, nope, 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 stop what you're doing, come on back and fill out the form and get to know the second floor of the town hall. So I'm not sure. I mean, I get what you're saying, Mr. DeLuca, and I think it's important, no doubt, but I think we have a lot of people that don't do it right now, even though it's $25.
Well, they're certainly not going to do it at 75.
Well, I think it's also a question of not knowing the process and what you need to do, and that's a whole other discussion about
Right.
communications and marketing. But how do others feel about it?
I understand Mr. DeLuca's point, and I get it. As I said in, I don't know what meeting we were in, another meeting.
Yeah.
That I feel like there can be 2, but not according to Mr. DeLuca. So it's almost like if there could be 2 levels, but if that's not possible, then I'd be moved to bring it down to 50, but no less than 50 for sure, because our director of code thinks it should even be 75, and we're still cheaper than other towns. Sort of like our commuter permit parking is way below other municipalities as well. So I would go with 50 if pushed, but I prefer 70.
So I was in the code committee and agreed with Ms. Adams and Mr. Daffis on 75 per the expert on the issue. So, I mean, I'm okay with 75. I think Mr. Luke brings a good point, but I'm just listening to those who are on the ground due to day-to-day work. So
if we have to do it one and we do it that way, maybe we can evaluate it and see if we're getting more inquiries off the side that you were just referring to, Mr. Daffis, if that's going up now that the price has gone up. So we can ask Mr. Palmer to keep track of that a little bit and then make an adjustment if necessary. That would be my suggestion.
Sounds reasonable. Mr. Lumbrick?
So is the revised suggestion to double it to 50 and sort of see what impact that has? Is that the suggestion, or no? Is it still at 75?
I think there's a compromise brewing here at 50 in light of what Mr. DeLuca stated.
Okay. I mean, at the risk of revealing to the public that some township committee members know more about certain subjects than others, I'm going to confess that you all know a lot more about this than I do. So, I'm really going to follow the crowd on this one. This sounds like a good compromise to me that, 50 is doubling it, which is a substantial increase. I mean, it's a 100% increase. And I hear Mr. DeLuca's concern, but I also hear the concern that, it costs us a lot more than that to do it. So I think maybe taking it to 50 sort of as a test balloon to see, does that have does that raise some of the issues, the slippery slope that Mr. DeLuca mentioned, or maybe does it show that we're still going to get compliance, or at least a similar level of imperfect compliance? So if 50 is where the compromise is going to land, that sounds reasonable to me. But again, all the rest of you know more about how this works than I do. So I will support where the majority consensus is.
Mr. Daffis, can you make a motion?
I'll move that we raise the price of our zoning permit, the fee rather, from 25 to 50.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Desiderio, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Desiderio. We'll now move on to our fifth and final discussion item, vaccination policy for events at township venues. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is something that came out of our senior advisory committee. Our seniors are active, again, our older adults, I should say, are active in our community. They are participating in events that are happening. We talked about some of the events earlier during our reports. Things are happening in town again, and we certainly have a very strong vaccination policy for our employees at Town Hall. So a recommendation was made to have a vaccination policy at events at township venues. Now, certainly private organizations and other entities that host events at our township venues have their own policies, and some of them do require proof of vaccination. The question is, should we do the same? Should we as a township say, you know what, we've had a no tolerance policy here. We're serious about COVID. It is the winter months and people are going inside and indoors. These events are going to be indoors, and our seniors are our most vulnerable population. There are breakthrough cases. I can attest to that. So, the question is, should we have such a vaccination policy at events that are happening at our township venues? Before putting this on for discussion, I asked Mr. Desiderio to do some legal research to see if there are any legal issues associated with this. And I also asked our township administration to research any such policies that other towns are implementing at their venues, at their township events. I'm not sure if we have that information, and I'm not sure if we're ready for a decision on this topic tonight. In fact, I would caution against it because I do think that we should have more information, but let's get the discussion started. How do others feel about this?
The floor is open.
Well, I guess maybe, first I would just say that, I haven't been following, maybe this, certainly as closely as our health officer and maybe as our township administrator and others. But I know that, right now, if you're in New York or as of a few days ago, LA, and you want to go to a restaurant or a lot of other places of, that are considered places of public accommodation, you have to show proof of vaccination. And we haven't done that. But I would think that, without knowing the law or presuming to intercept any research that Mr. Desiderio or Mr. Gines may have done on this, that, that our authority to require that in our own building or in our own event has got to be at least that, if not greater than, than the ability of cities like New York and LA to do so in private restaurants. And I'm for it. I think that, if we're having a public event in a township-owned building, we've set the policy that we want our employees to be vaccinated, and if they're going to be interacting with the public, whether it be our town hall employees or our public safety employees, that we want them to be vaccinated. And I don't think it's out of line for us. And in fact, I think it would be hypocritical for us not to put a requirement that if you're going to, attend a public event, in a township building, that you do the same, that you provide proof of vaccination or that you sit it out. And I'm certainly, open to hearing the counter argument to that, but off the top of my head, it just seems like the logical extension of the COVID vaccine policy that this body has already set would be to make a rule like this, unless there's some authority out there that says we can't, which would surprise me. But you know, as a lawyer, I'm surprised by what courts and legislatures do every day. So, you know, I'll wait to hear what Mr. Desiderio and Mr. Jimes have to say, and I realize they may not be ready to do that tonight. But from a policy perspective, I think this is a good idea, Deputy Mayor Dapis, and I'm inclined to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Lund. I wanted to add the policy recommendation is proof of vaccination or proof of a negative test result within the past 48 hours. So it would fall in line with the rest of our policy or whatever it is. Maybe it's 72 hours. Mr. Jimes can chime in on that. But, you know, there would be that option. It wouldn't just be proof of vaccination policy. I just wanted to add that in there.
Well, maybe I would go even further than the proposal, but I'd certainly vote to take us up, at least up to the proposal you're making now.
Do we have any info from our administrator or attorney?
No, I will tell you that I'm a little troubled by it. And we have not had an opportunity to really dig into it. I don't know if Mr. Jimes has, but I have some issues. But I think the real issue is, from a policy standpoint, is this something that you want to do? If you do, then we'll obviously move forward. If there's no policy, if you decide from a policy standpoint you don't want to do it, then, you know, then it's done. So what you're suggesting is that you cannot go to these events even if you put a mask on. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think masking is going to be required anyway indoors, especially at crowded events, because that is still the CDC guidance. That's still a best practice in mitigation, transmission mitigation. So even in New York and in other places where they require proof of vaccination at events, masking is also still required. So it's not either or.
Don't we have a mask policy in all of our public buildings anyway?
Yes.
We do.
So that's there. So this is an addition too, right?
Right.
So it's not like, you know, because we see some of these stores that said if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. We're not going to do that. You have to wear a mask. And if we adopt this, you have to be fully vaccinated.
Well, I'm not sure if we have a mandatory masking policy in our township venues. I mean, certainly we had events at the Woodland over the weekend. There was no mandatory masking. I mean, we tell people.
Mr. Jimes, don't we have a mandatory masking?
We do. You did vote on a mandatory masking in all, you know, public buildings. I'm not sure how that's been handled when a private entity rents out the Woodland for a wedding or something like that.
No,
well, that's a private, but yeah, but the thing, I was at the Woodland and they were giving out masks. Everyone had to wear a mask.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's an enforcement thing then. Fine. So we have a masking policy. So this would be in addition to.
So I would be okay with a policy that said if the town was sponsoring a senior program and the town was sponsoring it and can control the attendance, that this would happen. But I would not be for a blanket vaccination policy. And the reason being is there's a lot of different events that we have. We don't have the capacity to monitor it. And what happens if somebody has an event and we go there and half the people haven't been checked? Do we throw everyone out? How does this work? I think if the seniors are concerned about who's coming to a senior luncheon, then I would say, yeah, okay, let's say that has to be, you have to be vaccinated because you're sitting in there for hours with each other, or in an art class or something. But I think in some of the bigger things that go on at the Woodland or at Bergdorf, if you want to go see a play, the Strollers play, do you have to be vaccinated? I don't know. I don't think I want to vote for that.
Why not?
Wear a mask because they're in our building.
I just went to a play in New York City the other day. I had to show proof of vaccination.
Yeah, but that's New York City. I mean, there's no vaccination policy in the state. And I don't see how it just seems to me and I'm very much in favor of vaccine and I want everybody to get vaccinated.
Of course.
But there's the reality of we're not New York City. We don't have the capacity to operate like that. We were talking before, we can't even find a building attendant to work in our buildings. So let's be real. Let's do the things we can do. We know the seniors, we know who comes to these things. We can say, we're going to start on certain activities. Maybe some of the stuff with other classes that we hold. But I think on these larger events, it's just going to be too difficult to start right away. I would like to grow into it as opposed to start right away.
So are you saying, Mr. DeLuca, that you would favor this at certain venues or at all township sponsored events at all venues?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would separate venues from township events. I would say township sponsored events. We should look at it. What is the event? Who is the audience? How long they stay in the building, and make a determination. For a luncheon with the seniors inside, I would say yes. For an art class where you're spending 3 hours together in close proximity, yes. For a concert at the Bergdorf, maybe not.
But how do we ensure that seniors and others stay safe there? Are we just saying to them, then don't go to those things? You can't.
Well, you could let them know that there is no vaccination policy. There is a mask policy.
I mean,
everyone's making their own mind up.
I mean, would that be legal to parse it out that way, Mr. Desiderio?
Would be very difficult to draft. I mean, but you know what? I think the first, Mr. Johns, brought it to my attention. I think he's right. I think our first step is to find out whether or not we're preempted by the state. To the best of my knowledge, the state hasn't passed such a policy. All right. So the question is, do we have the authority to do that? So why don't you let us get an answer to that question, which we'll get to you relatively quickly. Frankly, I would think Ms. Davenport should be able to get it within 5 minutes. I'm sure her contacts at the state would be more than capable of giving her that answer. Was she at this meeting, Mr. Daffis?
She was, and her response was that that we could do this as far as she knows. Obviously, she's not a legal expert as yourself, but that it would need to be a policy decision by the TC.
Well, clearly that. So she doesn't think we're preempted by the state. Okay.
I would just add, going back to very early COVID, the county I worked in previously, initially I tried to do some much stricter regulations than what the state had at the time. And the state very swiftly came in and said, no, you can't do that.
Same thing with Jersey City and Hoboken.
Yeah. Let us check. You know what? Rather than go through a lot of discussion that may be moot, let us get the threshold answer to the question.
Right.
Those are the best discussions.
The moot ones?
All right, Mr. Daffis, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and
we'll get you an answer. We'll get you an answer within the next day or so, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so we'll table this until we have more information.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Daffis. So that concludes our discussion items for this evening. Very robust conversations. We'll now move on to agenda item number 13, which is the consent agenda. I will take a motion. Mr. Lundberg.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of items 13A through I on the consent agenda, including resolutions 335-21 through 341-21, approval of the regular session minutes of June 15, 2021, and the closed session minutes of November 3, 2021.
You get a second, please.
Second it.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Mr. Desiderio, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca.
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Desiderio. We are now on agenda item number 14, which is public comment on any subject matter. Limit 3 minutes. Please say your name, your address, and turn on your cam. We'll now open up the floor.
Good evening. For the second time, Mayor and Township Committee, we'll now begin the second public comment portion of the meeting on any subject matter. If anybody would like to address the Township Committee, please use the raise your hand function. We will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. First up, we have Heather Soslovsky. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening again. I just wanted to note that I very much agree that an assessment of the fields at DeHart Park needs to be done, but I urge you not to recreate the wheel. I don't want us paying for the same things over and over and over again. The fact that there may not be historical information currently available to the person requesting the study is concerning to me. I think any study of DeHart's fields needs to be comprehensive. It needs to include engineering, but much more than that. Usage information would have to go into that, sprinkler information, upgrade suggestions, conversations with all of the contractors involved and DPW. We know as simple as a $4,000 fix to the sprinkler earlier this year would have helped the flooding situation we had at one point. These are things that need to be done, but we also do have local residents who have extensive knowledge and have collected data and reports over many, many years. So even if the township hasn't kept the things that it paid for already, such as Osborne Organics reports, we have them. There are residents here who've been collecting them for decades. We have those reports. There are certain firms who've worked here before who have that institutional knowledge as well, who've made recommendations before. And I think that's the second part of this, is any study you do, you need to be committed to follow through on. We've previously done extensive studies of that field, those fields, and then dropped the ball. We haven't followed through as a town on the recommendations in those reports. We'll get some of them done, things start to get better, things look better, so we want to save money. And we take away some of that funding and some of that care. We went from something like 6 aerations a year to much less than that. We went from composting regularly to occasionally. So these are things that are so important to have fully done. And I agree it may cost a significant amount of money to do that study, but you shouldn't pay for things that already exist. And certainly the historical information is there. And if Mr. Jimes or whomever cannot find it, I'm telling you, just reach out and I will collect it from residents who have saved it over the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, next we have Jenny Winters. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes.
I think I'm on, right? Am I in? Can
Yes,
you hear me?
you're on.
Okay, great. I'm Jenny Winters. I live over by the high school. I live on Kensington Terrace at the corner of Crowell, and I just wanted to put in my 2 cents on the student parking. I really want to address the mayor really briefly and just say I love living by the high school. I'm a recent graduate, 3 graduates in the last couple of years. I love the vibrant community here. I love seeing the kids on the block. I have no issues with that, but I would have really liked some more planning on this. I just want to tell you 2 stories that came up in the last couple of weeks. One, there was an emergency on Valley. The police were trying to get down Crowell to attend to it, but there was a car coming up Crowell with the cars on both sides of the street and the cars coming towards Kensington. The police were basically blocked. I mean, they could not respond in a timely fashion. I mean, they got there, but I wish, a letter saying, we're going to do this. It's for this amount of time. We're going to have kids park on one side of the street. What's happening is they're all crowding down. Crowell is covered in cars. What's happening is that contractors can't find parking when they're working on houses. We have a lot of flooding during Ida. We have a lot of work going on the block. So they're parking in front of our driveways because there's nowhere else to put their cars. One day I came home and a parent was parked in front of my driveway and waiting for their student to come out. They were not looking up. I had to get out of my car and go ask them to please move so I could pull into my own driveway. I mean, it's really, it's a hindrance. And the traffic situation just feels just more intense right now. I don't know, everybody's angry on the road. We need to figure out a good traffic pattern around there. Lots of people in the neighborhood now are driving their kids to school. As you know, the kindergartners are now being taken all over town and they all have to time it, so perfectly. They have to leave especially early because they can't get their own kids to school on time. So, the sooner we deal with this, the better. So that's it. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Winters. Appreciate it as well. It's, Yeah, it's on, like, I remember Tuscan, how disaster that was until the chief
Yeah.
got his hands in there. And so
We can figure it out.
yeah, we're gonna figure it out. It's just,
Yeah.
we gotta be patient. Also with COVID, last year there were no, there was no students, or a hybrid, and then now they're
Yeah,
all
I know.
back. So it's just, yeah, there's a lot of like pieces that are making it challenging.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, next we have Deb Gregorio. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Guys, there I am. Okay. I'm on Kensington as well. I'm here to talk about the parking. So it's been a month. The buses are still in the student lot. The kids are still parking. I want to be very clear. We are not blaming the students here. We are blaming the school admin for allowing the kids to park illegally, and we are blaming the police for not enforcing the rules. And as Jenny brought up, around drop off and pickup, our streets become a single lane. All right, we're going to try to get cars going back and forth, but it's frankly nuts over here. And it's a safety issue, not just for EMT and fire inaccessibility, but also for all the pedestrians, for the students, for the parents, the teachers, and the people who live in the neighborhood. We have to get this resolved. And because it's the school and the police, we really need you guys and the town council to come in there and really navigate this for us and get this resolved. We're really asking for a time certain at this point. My concern is that this dithers, and I have another concern, and I'm very worried that, they'll get the parking lot fixed maybe sometime in our lifetime, and then it'll be convenient. There are more kids who want to park, so let's open the streets up. We really cannot have the street parking, the illegal street parking that we've had for the last month. So please, we're here tonight. I mean, I really didn't want to come back and be talking about this a month later. That's what I said the last time we were here. We need a date certain from you guys. We need a date certain from the school. We have no clue. They said something about painting lines, but we really don't know what's happened, when it's going to happen. And we'd like to really hear something definite in resolution to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greeno. I will follow up with Dr. Taylor and get a date for you and send you on an email thread.
Thank you very much. And, I'm talking to everybody. So, and you can reach out to anyone who's been on the call, but we've been very good about posting and getting the information out. So as soon as we have something definite, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who want to know.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no one else, Mayor.
Okay, hearing no one else, we will close our second and final public comment. And we're now at agenda item number 15, which is adjournment. I'll take a motion. Oh, wait.
We actually did have a hand raised.
Oh, what happened?
We had a hand raised at the end of public comment.
Came in late.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's hear the next individual then.
Okay, Mayor. So Nan, N-A-N.
You're on mute, Ms. Nan.
All right, am I there?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I'm Nancy Elkins. I don't know why I came on as Nan like that. Sorry, I was having trouble clicking on this thing. Anyway, I'm also from Kensington Terrace, and I just want to agree with the people who came before me about the situation on there, and also your comment about, that we're blaming the students is absolutely, way off the, that's, totally wrong. We're fine with the students. Most of us have had students at the high school. We love the high school students, but we don't love their cars parking in front of our house, blocking our driveways. And it's a very, very dangerous situation if there's a lot of cars and children go between cars and try to cross the street, and a car can come down and hit them. In the morning, when I pull out to go to work, it's like Route 78 on Kensington Terrace. I mean, it's like just pulling out of my driveway is hazardous, and I think of myself as living on a nice, quiet street. And it's, zooming cars down down Kensington Terrace. So I just want to, I just wanted to add as another person on Kensington. You'll be hearing from more and more of us if something doesn't get resolved. And the thing about the, redrawing lines doesn't really answer our questions. Also the lack of community of working with us as a community, the fact that this was done without any notification of any of us. And we find out by just seeing students parking on the street, and then you make this comment that, we're blaming the students. I mean, I just feel like we're being forgotten, that the people in the neighborhood don't seem to be the important in this. It's all about, where we can park students. So I think I've said enough. It's at the end of the evening. So just another Kensington Terrace neighbor. Okay.
No, thank you for your comments. And again, I will relay that back to the school district to make those decisions regarding their parking lots and let them know how you felt about not being communicated to. And I will follow with Dr. Taylor first thing in the morning. And send an email
Mayor,
out
I think,
too. It's fine. So thank you very much for your comments.
Mayor, I think, could you also reach out to the police chief? I don't disagree that we need to start enforcing our own laws and parking.
Agreed. I mean, Chief Duvall and I and Dr. Taylor and Principal Frank have been on conversations, and the next step is for him to send a communication out through the school district, letting the young people know that he's going to be doing the enforcement, the ordinance on the books, and then also e-blast will go out from the township just for those who are relevant in that area, knowing that's going to happen as well. So he's aware of that.
Mayor, I know the situation with the school vans. Is the pool parking lot an option for parking some of these vans and get them out of here?
We looked at the pool parking lot. We looked at Underhill Field. We've looked at these options. I'll just say I need to follow Dr. Taylor and just solidify that they followed through on what they said they were going to do when we met before at the end of last week of October. The direction that they provided and communicated to me and to Chief Duvall was those buses were going to go back up to Jesuit Field, which would open up that lot and put the kids back in. I also spoke to the current development team that owns Gleason's. I've secured 13 spaces there for teachers as well. So there's more spaces for students. Their maintenance person was supposed to, stripe that lot, creating 8 or 9 more spaces across from the gym. So there are a lot of things that were communicated. I'll just find out if they were done, and the chief is ready to go. So I think they're obviously, the school district and the town separate, but still same entities. And I've communicated that and documented that as well. So we'll get it done.
And just to remind you, our DPW does have a striper.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
We have a striping machine. So if we can, maybe we could expedite it by providing some assistance.
Good call out.
And Mayor, if they're sending out communication, because it's not just students parking, the problem is parents driving their kids to school. So to the extent that we can start reminding people, I mean, if your kid's late for school, they won't be late next time if they, are late for school and then get penalty at school instead of just saving them. Yeah. But that's parenting. I don't want to get into it. I just want more people to walk. It's causing a lot of problems that there's so many parents driving one kid in each car. It's just lines, Prospect Street and every other street. So it's a problem.
Yeah. And I think, I agree. I think the chief has got to put together his study, because he did a great job with those other 3 schools, and we need to get that going too, to help alleviate some of that as well. So, okay. All right. We are again on
motion
15. All right. It's her second.
We all got a pack.
All in favor?
Aye.
Safe travels.
Yeah.